Hello, everybody. This is Allie with Tuesday's Top Tip, and I have an exciting one for you because we're going to kind of look at credit in a different way. I know typically when we talk about credit, we generally like to think about credit in the perspective of what a consumer thinks. So, for instance, if a consumer has a 680 score, their thought process is, hey, if I have a 680 score, then I should be able to buy a home. So we're going to look at things a little bit differently and how a loan officer would actually look at a credit report, or let's say your credit report. We're talking about you. So again, I'm Allie Ault. I am here for your Tuesday top tips. And again, we're going to flip that perspective. But I want to just give you a little where I'm at so you understand what's going on behind me. So you'll see a lot of people moving around. I am at the Ault conference here in Orlando, Florida with Patrick David, and we can blame him for the reason that I'm on here late. So I apologize for that. But I didn't want to miss the opportunity to give you this valuable information. So you'll see people moving around here. They're finishing up lunch and they're going back in. The doors open and are open right now to come back in, and they close exactly at 1:30, which they don't open back up. So he's very strict about that, which I really respect his strictness on, hey, be there and do the thing that you said you were going to do. But anyway, I'd love to dive into this topic of credit through a loan officer's eyes. And guys, if you don't know this, I am an officer, so I can come to you live with this information and let you know exactly what I'm looking for when I'm looking at a loan, but also other loan officers. So those of you who are credit professionals or financial professionals and you're working with individuals whose goal is to buy a home, this message may be for you. So listen up. So again, I've worked with a lot of people over the years as a loan officer, as a credit professional, as a financial professional. My niche was always first-time home buyers. So oftentimes we come to the table and a client would call and say, hey, I have a 680 score. I know I'm ready to go. That's not always true. So when a loan officer is looking at credit, it's actually about a story. So I'm going to read off to you what I have here. Because the truth is your credit score is only the cover of the book. So what I always would tell clients is when you come into the door for a mortgage, the credit score opens the book, right? It opens the door for us to look at you and say whether or not we can get you approved. Because if the credit score is not there, you can't even look at possibly getting you approved. So the credit score is the cover of the book, and it allows us to open the book, right? And so now what's in the book, that's the credit report, that's your credit profile, which is what we're really going to be diving into to see if you can get approved. So that 680 score or that even 750 score. I'll give you a personal example as of this morning. So I had a client, credit score is a middle score of a 718. I am not getting an approval on a conventional loan. I'm getting referral eligible. So my point of saying that is that person would have never imagined that their 714 would keep them from getting a DU approval because they have 714. And they would have told everybody that, but that's the case, unfortunately, for this individual. Can we get a loan for her? Yes, but we're going to have to look at this book, this story, a different way and put her in a different program. So I think it's really important that you guys know that, especially if you are credit pros or financial pros, or you are working with consumers trying to get to their goal of buying a home. And those of you who might be out there listening to this and your goal is to buy a home, you need to be listening up too, because I'm going to tell you exactly what loan officers are looking for. So you can be prepared and you can make sure that you have it. And for you credit professionals and financial professionals, you're going to be able to let those people know what they need to do. So, which is really important, because if we say we're in the business of helping people get to goals, we better know how to get to that goal. And since most of us in the credit space, I know myself included, and I know a lot of people that I coach, you guys are working with mortgage lenders often, so this is information that you really should know. So there are loan officer priorities, okay? So let's start here. What does a loan officer really care about? Okay, here's the things there. These are unspoken questions that a loan officer is thinking as they're looking at your credit profile, okay? Number one, will this person pay this loan back? Very important question. So we're looking, does this credit profile, does the income, does the assets, does everything show that, hey, this person can pay this back? Will they pay back on time, right? So I can look at your history of paying your debts and determine, are you going to pay on time? Well, time is important in a mortgage. And what could stop them from paying me back? So are there possibly obstacles, unseen sometimes obstacles that could prevent them from paying back? For instance, we might be looking at payment shock. So if I know that you're paying rent of $600 a month and now you want to buy a home and that monthly payment's going to look like $1,200 a month, we call that payment shock. So again, some of this is not on the credit report, but a lot of what we can see about your story is shown on your credit report. It's like your stamp of your history of how you're doing, how you pay your bills, what bills you have out there. Are you maxing out everything? Are you, is your debt to income ratio high? And we see a lot of extended credit out there. You're looking at a lot of different things. So notice it's not what your score is. That wasn't the question that we asked. We opened the door, but that's not the question that we're asking. That's just the one piece, right? That's the door opener. We're balancing three pillars. We're looking at loan approval. One is credit, one is income, and one is asset. Of course, I just stated that a second ago, right? So credit, income, and asset. So credit shows how you managed your debt, how you handle your debt. Income obviously shows how you're going to pay for it. Are you going to be able to pay for it? Do you have the capacity to pay, right? An asset shows you have reserves. So being like, okay, if a bad day happens, of which that happens to most of us, do we have reserves to fall back on so that we can still pay the mortgage? So again, those three questions, right? Which have to deal with credit. Will this person pay me back? Will they pay back on time? And what is there something that could stop them from paying? So we look at those three questions. Will this person pay me back? That's an income question, right? We're looking at, can they pay? Will they pay me back on time? That's a credit question. What could stop them from paying me? That's an asset question. Okay, so that's what we're looking for in determining your eligibility. Okay, so example, have you seen a person with a 750 score that gets denied because their income was unstable, right? So think about it this way. If you are self-employed and you've only been self-employed for a year and you have no prior experience in this field, I need 2 years of history, right? So that could be determined as unstable income at this present time, right? Because you don't know what you're going to do. Well, if you went to a hourly rate and now you're a commission, but you've never worked in that field, I need to see that you have stability in your income, right? And have you seen someone that has a 640 and they're approved because everything else checked out, right? So the income, the asset, and the credit all checked out. So again, if not the score, that's the cover. Now, how do we open that up? Okay, so what they really look at in terms of the credit report. So I'm going to break it down the credit report. Now let's break down the credit side. This is where people are shocked, okay? Because it's not just the score, it's the profile. This is the story. So let's go to payment history. Lenders don't just look at the percentage, they ask how recent was the late, okay? So when I talk about percentages, like 35% of your credit score is your credit history, right? But how recent was the late? Was it a pattern or a one-time mistake, right? So if you told me, or if I'm looking at a credit file and there's a 30-day late 3 months ago, or versus a person who had a 30, 60, 90, that's a pattern, right? So we're looking at that. A 30-day late 2 years ago is not the same as a 30-day late 2 months ago. That's another thing. So your history has a lot to do with where you're at, but we're looking at really, where are you at in the most present moment, right? So if you had an issue in the past and we can tell a story about it, extenuating circumstance, for instance, but now we're on track, that tells a story so that we can see that story in your credit report. Utilization, not just the overall percentage, but which accounts are maxed. So we're actually looking to see, are you maxing out on your credit cards? Are you maxing out on your debt? That's a behavior. That's a story you're telling us, is that you have a tendency to max out. Okay, so a lot of people don't know we look at that. We look at that. Maxed out $300 credit card, not as scary as a maxed out 15K credit card. Have you ever heard of a person getting a loan? They have really high credit scores. This happened to me, by the way. I'm in the pursuit of, I have multiple businesses I own. So I was using personal credit at times to help that business grow. Went to buy a new home and they looked at me and said, oh, your credit score is fabulous, but you're maxed out on your credit card debt. So they forced me to pay off all my credit card debt so that I can get qualified for the loan. My debt to income ratio was not a problem. My credit was not a problem. My behavior, my story was the problem. Okay. And so a high balance on a single credit card can still hurt your approval process, but know that if you have multiple credit cards that are maxed out, now this is looking like a behavioral issue that may be preventing us from verifying whether or not you can pay this mortgage. Age of credit. A thin file makes you look risky, even with good credit scores. So I have an example when I do my live demos with Level Up School. We have a client that had the 750 credit score across the board, all 3 credit bureaus, 750 credit score, but they cannot get a conventional loan. And I told the story. They went through Dave Ramsey's program. They paid off all their debt, closed all their credit accounts. They still have that 750 for now, but I can't give them a conventional loan. They have a thin credit file. Everything that they closed was now in the past. It doesn't tell me the predictability today. So they're a larger risk. Lenders like to see depth of credit like 5, 10, 15 years of history if possible, but at least 2 years. At least 2 years. It's really important. Mix of credit, revolving plus installment equals stability. So we do want to see, hey, can you manage credit cards? Can you manage installment loans? Both of those is what I call part of the perfect high of credit, is being able to show me that you can manage both types of credits. It's really important. And I've had a lot of people in the past because they've had issues. Let's say they had a bankruptcy because they maxed out their credit card and couldn't pay it. They have a tendency that they don't want to get a credit card because of that. And I understand that. But then understand that we're also looking at you as a risk because you have just told me, when you told me I don't want to get a credit card, I got in trouble with that. You told me that you're a risk, right? Like, let's say you didn't even verbally tell me that. But if you are working on your credit right now and your credit professional says, hey, you need to get a credit card, and your hesitation is, oh no, I don't want a credit card because I've done wrong on it before and that put me in bankruptcy. Well, then that tells me you don't know how to handle these or that. Thus, you are going to be at higher risk, right? So keep that in mind as you're working on your credit. If you're that person working on your credit professionals, if you have a client that says, oh, I'm not getting a credit card, and let them know, then you're going to be seen as a higher risk because it tells us that you may not be able to manage that. Okay. Recent activity, new accounts, inquiries, and especially open disputes. Disputes are a big deal in underwriting. They freeze negative items. Okay, so that's one of the reasons we don't like it, which can inflate the credit scores. That's the reason we don't like them. Loan officers will usually require them to be removed before closing, which means the client's approval can suddenly disappear. I can't tell you how many times I've seen this. A client comes into my door, they worked with a credit professional, they have dispute after dispute after dispute after dispute, and I cannot do the loan with those disputes. So I have to have them remove the disputes. And when I do that, or they do that, the credit score plummet, and now their approval is no longer good. Please don't let that happen to you. Disputes should never be the end game. It is a part of the process. If you see errors and inaccuracies on the credit report, fraud, different things like that, that's when you attack it with the dispute process, because that's an important part of your job. But if you are disputing things just because I don't like it, it's negative, that's not going to help you in the long run. Trust me on that. Collections. Loan officers care about recency, status, and updating. An old paid collection that hasn't updated in years is not a big deal. We don't care about those. Actually, a paid collection, we're actually really happy about that. But if you pay it and it updates now, your score could drop mid-process. Now, that being said, there are many, and almost all of the big collection companies will do a settle and delete. It's an internal process they have. You don't even have to negotiate for that. So if you're able to pay an account that also gets completely removed, you win. You win big. So please don't take that off the table in part of the process that you're working on. That means collection could be a big deal. So one of the things you want to look at in determining that is, number one, will the collection company settle and remove? Number two is, if you're unsure, you can call them. They usually will tell you. Number three, if they do not do that, then you're looking at the last reported date. If they're updating the reporting every month, pay the thing. It'll be better for you to pay it even if it doesn't get removed. But if they have not been updating it and you pay it, it could devastate your credit score. So be very careful. That last reported date is super important. And I hope you credit pros know that. Public records. So on the credit reports that you see as a consumer or credit professionals, you're going to see public records. You're going to see bankruptcies. Years and years ago, We also saw judgments, foreclosures, we saw late tax liens of any nature, and those are simply not on the credit report anymore. So it's very important that you guys know that loan officers get a secondary report added to the credit report. We refer to that as the stage report. And that report gives us those other details. So if you are working with mortgage professionals, it is a very, very important that you're also seeking to have your clients order their free LexisNexis report, which will indicate whether they have any judgments, tax lien, or bankruptcies. Of course, you'll see the bankruptcy on the credit report, but you'll see that. That way, you know if there's anything else that's going to have to be taken care of besides just the things you see on the credit profile, right? So your credit profile is different than what we're seeing. There's another mix in here, and this is unfortunately not one that I can help you with, but there's something called a Cavers report that we will also do. This is a government report. It lets us know if the consumer is delinquent on federal debt or government debt. So student loans would be a big one. But you can oftentimes see that on the credit report. So you see delinquent student loan debt, 30, 60, 90, 120. It may be very important for you to consider that they might be in default. You can have the student go on to studentaid.gov to find out if they have a notation for default. If they do, they have to get that out of default, especially, well, only if, I should say, they're looking at getting a government loan like FHA or VA. If they're getting conventional, we're not going to put Cavers. Okay, so that's something you guys should know. Red flags for loan officers. Here's where I want to slow down, because these red flags can absolutely kill approval, even if the score looks fine. So, open disputes. I've already mentioned this one, but it's worth repeating. Open disputes. Okay, disputes are not always your friend. It's not the first trigger to do. If it's negative and you know it's negative and you did it, deal with it. Read some more positive. Disputes should not be your first trigger. Recent late payments, anything in the last 12 months is a deal breaker for many lenders. So just keep in mind, anything in the last 12 months is a real deal breaker. Number 3, new trade lines. Opening a new credit card before applying looks like desperation. So be careful about how many trade lines, especially right before, and certainly don't get new ones after you've gotten the approval. We don't want to see any new debt. Guys out there who say, oh, I'm getting ready to close my home, so I'm going to go buy all new furniture on my credit card. We actually do relook at your credit report before closing, and if that kind of situation happens, that could mess up your closing, and you might not be able to close for that one loan. I've even seen people go out and try to buy a car. The right time to do that stuff is after you've closed on your loan. Okay, so be very careful. High utilization, especially if it jumps suddenly. So be very careful. You want to keep your utilization low. The golden rule for mortgage lenders is 20% or less of your credit limit, okay? And that's across every single credit card, not overall, okay? Collections that suddenly update. This looks fresh and risky. So if you, and this is where credit professionals have to be careful. Look at that last data reporting, because if you're looking at that last data reporting and it has not updated in the last 2 years, or it hasn't been updating, and then you dispute it because it's negative and you don't like it, you can renew that last data reporting and mess up your client from getting their home. I've seen it happen too many times with credit professionals, unfortunately, and there's nothing we can do about it once that triggers that update. So again, that's another reason why disputes are not not always your friend. Okay, and the same thing like paying a collection, right? So any activity that would create a renewal of that negative that has not been updating regularly would not be a good thing. Student loans and forbearance. If they're not reporting accurate payments, the underwriter may calculate a default 1% of the balance, which could kill someone's DTI. So think about that for a second. So I'm going to give you an example. I had a client with a 700 score, but one dispute of a $2,000 collection. Underwriting kicked it back. Dispute had to be removed. Dropped the credit score 40 points. And suddenly no credit approval anymore. And that is why loan officers are cautious. And that is why loan officers typically won't use a credit professional, because they're not aware. They want to know that you know what they need and what could prevent them from being able to do the deal. So wrapping up here, how to prepare like a loan officer. So what you can do, whether you're a consumer or credit professional, to look at credit the way loan officers do, here's what you want to do. Don't dispute blindly. Always ask, how will this look to an underwriter? Will this update a reporting that hasn't been updating? have an action plan. So level of support creates those action plans. Loan officers love these action plans. If you're not already doing it, you're going to create an action plan, go in, change the name to John Doe, and use that for marketing purposes. We love an action plan. We would rather you never do one dispute and do an action plan, okay? But we want an action plan that actually works for the consumer, and that's where Level Up Score comes, because it was created by a loan officer for you guys for the purpose of helping a client get to their true goal of buying a home. Prioritize fixes. So deal with recent negatives first. Pay down utilization. Snowball effect could be great, but I actually think that the best way to do it is to look across. Number one, what's the easiest credit card to get down to 20%? What's the second easiest? What's the third? And go down that way. You're going to get a better score result and improvement that way than you will if you try to pay a little bit on each one. Okay. Don't add new accounts unless it's part of your strategy for helping them improve their then credit file or some other a utilization ratio problem, things like that. Otherwise, you don't do it. Especially, guys, if you are already pre-approved for the home loan, you should not be getting any new credit. Think stability. Loan officers love boring reports, consistent payments, low balances, no surprises. And so I'm going to wrap up here. So here's the bottom line. Loan officers don't just care about the score. They care about the story. If the story shows risk, they'll pass on it, even if the score looks okay. If the story shows stability, they'll often approve it, even if the score isn't perfect. As credit professionals, our job is to stop thinking like consumers and start thinking like lenders. And that's what makes us so invaluable to society, is and to our clients, and to loan officers, and to real estate agents that we partner with. Because we know how to look at a credit report in the lender's eyes. And if you don't know, now you know. So make sure you rewatch this video so you can get it down. And if you're looking for a tool to help you build loan officers with approved action plans, you know exactly where to get that. That's Level Up Score. I've created it specifically for this purpose. And if you're not using it, I don't know why you're not, because it's simply the best. It's going to help you retain clients, keep them sticky. You don't have to analyze a credit report. I'm here at the Vault conference. I just listened to Patrick Bet-David talk about, if you are not creating systems and leveraging every software you possibly can to help minimize your energy output, then you will not grow your business. And I'm going to tell you that now again and again, because I knew it for myself. I was successful in the credit repair business, but because I didn't use systems, I was burning out. And that's why you see Level Up Score today, because it works. It worked for me. And now I get to be in places like this while my business is still thriving. And that's what Patrick Bet-David is talking about on stage earlier today. So the next time you're looking at a credit report, don't just ask ask what story does this tell? That's how you win approvals and build real partnerships with your loan officers and your real estate agents and any lender. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you at next Tuesday's Top Tips. I'm not sure what the subject matter is here today, but I'll drop you a line and let you know. I'm super excited for you. Again, replay this if you didn't get it, because you guys are invaluable if you can partner with loan officers, real estates, and lenders, and truly help your clients get to their credit financial